The Honesty podcast is a space for women who know that they're meant for a life that's full of magic, excitement, and wonder. If you're ready to reconnect with your power and listen to that inner knowing that says you're meant for more, grab a tea, take a breath, and let's begin. Hi, and welcome back to the Honesty podcast. I'm so grateful to have you here today on this second episode. Today is a juicy one. It is all about the subtle inner knowing that you are meant for more. And what I mean by this is this feeling that you are actually meant to do more in this lifetime. It's almost like the soul is speaking to you to say, no, I came here for a reason. This is great, but actually we are meant for more. Let's do this. Let's take some action. Let's figure out what feels aligned and what doesn't. And I just thought I would share a little bit of my own journey with this as well, because I learned through example from other people. And it really all started for me during my Saturn return, which a lot of people will begin almost coming back home to themselves during this time. I do feel like it is a time where we suddenly realise that all of these external things that we thought would make us happy, the job, the house, doing what our parents wanted us to do, settling in life, it starts to crack. And the realisation that there is more to life starts to appear during this time. And for anybody who isn't aware of what a Saturn return is, in astrology, around the 29th year, Saturn will return back to where you were when you were born. So in your natal chart, you'll have Saturn in a certain sign, and 29 years later, it almost does its full circle, and then it returns back to the sign from when you were born. And Saturn is all about boundaries and structure. And so it does open up your eyes, and it did with me, to anything that just really isn't serving a purpose. And the only way I can describe it is that I just felt like the rug was being pulled from underneath me. Me and my partner had just moved to Canada. We've been traveling for 6 months around Central America before that. And we had the most amazing time in Central America. It was just everything I could have hoped it would be. And then it was really just very hard to get into Canada. And I'm a signs person, and I just was not listening to the signs at all. I just was very tunnel vision. No, I need to get into Canada. Like, we've got this working holiday visa. We're going to have the best time. And unbeknown to me, because I really wasn't into astrology at the time or human design, I didn't realise that as I entered Canada in that May was when my Saturn return literally started that month, and everything went wrong that year. Everything that I valued or thought I valued, I did a big 180. And what I found was that I really went back to being a child and had to look at what in my soul lit me up. What did I feel nostalgia for? What did I feel at home doing? And as a little girl, I was really into witchcraft. I loved any fantasy books. I was part of the Harry Potter generation. And I just in love with magic, and not even just on a Harry Potter level. I would go to this little town in England called Haworth. It's where the Bronte sisters are from, so Emily Bronte, Wuthering Heights, and Charlotte Bronte, Jane Eyre. So like really incredible female authors. And it was a half an hour journey for me to drive there with family as a child. And there was this magical spell shop called Spooks, which did tarot. I think they did tarot readings in there, and pendants and spell books and candles, and I was obsessed. And I can just remember me and my auntie when I was a little girl getting each other pendants and putting little spells, and I had so many spell books. Would put spells on kids at school, like I want a boyfriend and I really fancy this boy, and then it would happen and I'd be like, whoa. So yeah, I just had the best time with magic and fairies, and just my imagination ran wild as a little girl. And it really did pull me back into this world whilst I was in Canada. And it made me feel really sad that I'd ever neglected that part of myself. And I'd always tampered with oracle cards and called myself spiritual, but not really. Like, I didn't really practice that. I wasn't journaling, meditating, connecting with the universe, source, God. And I just had really lost my way in that regard. And I think actually looking at the 29 years prior to that, I could really tell that I'd lost my way at some point. You know, it's really hard to look back on my late teens and early 20s because I just really wasn't myself during that time. And I think that our Saturn return happens to us to make us reconnect and realign with who we are in here, in our hearts and our souls. And so I started listening to podcasts. I found the Saturn Return podcast by Kagi Dunlop, which, I mean, I'd never even ventured into astrology before that, but I had time on my hands. I couldn't work for the first 3 months I'd moved to Canada. And from there, it just grew. I ended up joining this incredible women's moon circle in the UK. So it was like a slice of home. Twice a month, I'd join online and set intentions and look at what needed to let go. And then I had my astrology chart read, and it was like, oh my God, yeah, I'm like learning so much about myself. And then that led to human design and finding out I was a projector. And it was just this mind-blowing experience over this 1 year, but also one of the toughest years of my life. I felt really sad. I felt really trapped in this country I didn't want to be in. I was working for somebody who didn't value me at all, and it was becoming more and more apparent the more I worked there. I was doing a job I didn't like, but I was starting to dream. I was starting to get that feeling, that inner knowing that I was meant for more. And it was through this experience that I could sit and go, well, what does that look like? And I think actually having the astrology and human design and all of these tools helped me because it meant that I could look at my future vision and still connect with, is this going to work for my body, my soul, my energy? And it's been a journey. And even, in human design, you've got profile lines, the 3-5, it's the experimenter. And I can say categorically throughout my life, I've definitely been the trial and error, the person who will try this and it doesn't work, and okay, I'll go and try this. And I think even after learning about human design and astrology during that Saturn return time, I've spent the last 4 years really trial and erroring my life in business, in where to live, in friendships, and it's served its purpose. I feel really good, but I had to listen to that cue, that moment where I was like, I can't continue doing what I'm doing because it just isn't leading me to somewhere where I'm going to feel this inner joy, this like gratitude for life, which is, let's be honest, hard to sometimes feel when we're not in an environment that supports us. I wasn't happy in Canada. I wasn't happy in the job that I was in. I had just moved from job to job for the prior 10 years because I was traveling, and that served a purpose. But now I just thought, no, I really need to do something that makes me feel like I'm here for a reason and that makes me happy. And that's actually been a big deconditioning for me over the last 3 years, is this like, a job doesn't make you happy. And like actually finding and like doing these calls with people where I'm like, oh my God, I've loved every single minute I was on that call with that person. This is new, and just like breaking that pattern of, no, a job can't lead to happiness. Like, you work and then you live, and they're two completely separate things, when in actual fact, they're really not. You can actually find so much joy in the work that you do. And it's been definitely a process for me, but it really is leaning into, and if you're listening to this podcast, I feel like you are having this moment or have had this moment and you really resonate with what I'm saying, where you just get these spidey senses that, no, you're meant for more. And I think one of the big things here is allowing yourself to want more without feeling guilty about it. And, especially as women, it's almost like we are programmed to believe that we are selfish for wanting more. That whatever we have, we should just be really grateful we've got it. And don't get me wrong, I am grateful for being alive and the people in my life. And I could always find things to be grateful for, but that doesn't mean I can't dream bigger. It just means that by dreaming bigger and almost shedding this old skin of what I thought was possible for myself, I can become more of who I am. It's like Our souls chose us, this vessel, to live this life, to expand, to grow, and challenge ourselves and find happiness and joy and elevation. And only by being honest about what we want in this life can we reach that. So I think start by listening to that voice and really looking at, what is it telling you? What are you here to do? What isn't working for you? What is actually areas of your life where it's not bad, but it's not great either? And just getting honest about where you're at with that. I think you'll also find as well that you have started to feel some dissatisfaction in everyday life, in everyday things that maybe once upon a time you didn't feel. And this can actually be challenging when you are in partnership or have friendships or are in a job and you know everybody there, where you didn't feel like this before, but now suddenly you do. And I think one of the biggest sort of growing moments me and my partner had was when I was going through my Saturn return, because prior to that, I am a very happy-go-lucky person in general. Like, my cup is always full, and that's how I see the world. And then to suddenly have me in bed crying and just not knowing what to do with myself and counting down the days till we left Canada, and I just couldn't stop crying. It was like I had all of this pent-up emotion, this energy that needed a release, and it was like a big purging of like my old self, but for a whole year. So I can even remember us speaking together and I was like, am I depressed? Like, is this the new me? Because obviously at the time I didn't have the tools I have now to get through it. And this was new to him, like this version of me that just wasn't happy all the time. And, like for us, we had to have deep conversations and be open and honest, which was perfect for us. I mean, in the moment, it doesn't feel perfect for us, but looking back, I think it really helped us to communicate openly with each other. But, even for my parents and friends, it was like, what are you going through? And who is this new version of you you're becoming? And it really can be quite challenging to accept that for ourselves, of like, okay, I'm listening to this inner niggle, but where is that going to lead me? Does this mean that I'm going to end up losing people? Does this mean that I'm suddenly going to hate turning up for my job, which doesn't feel good? And they are all very valid things to think and feel. But it's almost taking a moment and knowing that by going through this and putting your needs first, the difficult conversations will happen, but it'll be so worth it in the end. And if people can't handle you becoming more of who you are and listening to your dreams and ambitions and maybe moving in a different direction, then they aren't meant for you. In the most loving way possible, you are outgrowing them. And it can be really hard. It is a grieving process. I ended up losing friends in the process and upping my boundaries because, becoming more of who we are means doing that. And it was hard. But I can say, sat here doing this podcast now, years later, after doing all of this work and continuing to do the work, that I do not regret a moment of it. And actually, in my morning gratitude practice now, I am so grateful that I listened to that inner knowing, that I followed it and trialed it and began to put myself first, which is a challenge in itself because I definitely didn't put myself first for a lot of my life. That felt very triggering and overwhelming, to not put other people first and actually start to listen to what I need. I think if you are beginning to listen to this voice, this sign, this feeling, then do it with compassion towards you, do it with grace towards yourself, be honest, even if it's in a journal, be honest about how you're feeling and what's coming up, because it is a purging. You are going to have to shed and release old versions of you, emotions that have been stored. I think sometimes also it coming to light how little other people can think of you as you start to put yourself first can be confronting. So making sure that you are communicating openly and that you are also prioritizing a bit of a mindset practice. And I mean, if, doing meditation isn't for you, if sitting and doing breath work isn't for you, just making sure that you're going on a walk or that you're just at least writing down the thoughts on a piece of paper or voice noting yourself. There's a number of ways that you can do a daily practice that helps honor who you are. If it means going and speaking to somebody professionally, go and do that. If it means finding other people that are also going through what you're going through, go and do that. Just whatever can support you in this next stage of your personal development growth, because that's what it is. It's, you personally developing, isn't it? And then I think this is also a time to celebrate, because you are literally stepping in to your personal authority. You are taking that power back of where you want to go, who you want to be, who you are. You are beginning to love yourself for who you are and saying no to things that you really don't want to do, following the path that lights you up the most. It's you taking back that power and stepping into that authority. You are the master of you. And it's actually so beautiful and so enriching when you step into that energy. When you start to look at yourself in the mirror and think, hell yeah, I deserve the best. I'm beautiful today. I am going to have the best day ever because that's what I deserve. I deserve the best. And it can take weeks, months, years to really believe that. And trust me, I know, because I've done it. But taking that first step to be like, yes, I am going to be the authority of myself, is just so wonderful and will actually raise your vibrational frequency so much by just taking that first move, by being inquisitive, by asking the questions, listening to the podcast, reading the book, speaking to other people. Maybe you were into astrology and human design and you go and get your chart read. By doing that, it really is a moment where you are the leader of your own life. And it is just so amazing that you have reached this place, because so many people don't. And so even being grateful for that, like I always think back to the day that I stepped foot into Canada and what a year it was, but what a great year it was, because even though it was challenging and hard and confronting in moments and just an emotional year, it was just so worth it. It was so worth it. And now when I look in the mirror, I am just so proud and grateful for the person I see looking back after doing this work. So I'm going to end the podcast episode there, but I really hope that if you are listening to this and it resonates, that you go and take that first step in whatever capacity that is. Even if it is just putting some pen to paper and going, what is this inner voice telling me? What is this subtle inner knowing telling me? What is my life meant for? What is more? What is more? Thank you so much for listening to this episode. I really hope that you have taken something away from it, and as always, I'm just going to be so grateful for anybody who has watched. I hope you have a beautiful day, and I'll speak to you soon. I work with women who know that they're meant for more. If that's you, you'll find everything you need in the show notes.